So today let's start with our 10th class of most important current affairs series for UPSC Prelims 2020. And what we had seen in last lecture, we had seen 5 topics of economy and economics from the month of March. Today from the month of March only we will be trying to complete 4 more topics related to economy and economics. These are our 4 topics. First one is Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020. And what is that? Why it is in news? Because we have done an amendment in our laws. We have this Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1957, which came in Jawaharlal Nehru time. And the second law we have related to coal mines is the Coal Mines Special Provision Act 2015. So we are doing an amendment and passing a new law, the Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020, for amendments in these two laws, 1957 law Act and 2015 Act. One related to MMDR, that is Mines and Minerals Development Regulation, and one is Coal Mines Special Provision Act. You can also call it CMSP Act. Okay, so these two laws will be amended with this particular law, the Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020, and that is why it is in news. And the second news is Modified Electronics Manufacturing Clusters Scheme, EMC 2.0. See, we already had one electronics manufacturing cluster scheme. Now we are doing some modification and coming with the version 2 of the same electronics manufacturing clusters scheme. That is why it is in news. Third news, very famous, very popular news, consolidation of public sector banks. It is already happening, has happened many times, has happened during Narsimhan time also. So we will see all those committees also, Narsimhan and all. Okay, this is our third point, third topic. And the last one will be taxing global technology companies. Global technology companies, how do we tax them? That is a problem, right? They are not situated in India. They are having the business globally, but we need to tax them because they are deriving benefit and economy from our geography. So we need to tax them. So that is why this is in news, taxing global technology companies, and we will discuss it. So these are our 4 topics. Let's start with Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020. So the introduction already given. Mineral Laws Amendment Bill 2020 proposes to do an amendment in Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1957, and the second law also needs the amendment through this bill, and that law is the Coal Mines Special Provision Act 2015. So now let us try to understand what is the amendment, what is the purpose of the amendment, what is the benefits, and what are the issues. First of all, see what is Mines and Minerals Development Regulation Act. What is the Act of 1957? This Act, MMDR Act, regulates the overall mining sector in India. This has a holistic view. Overall mining sector is regulated by this Act, MMDR Act of 1957. And the Coal Mining Special Provision Act, that act provides for the auction and allocation of mines among the bidders, and that allocation was cancelled because you know the coal scam of 2014. So Supreme Court struck down the whole coal allocation itself. So Supreme Court said that the whole coal allocation done by the UPA government in that time is very dubious. So the whole coal allocation was totally cancelled, right? And also that is why we need amendment. Also in this law only, CMSP Act only, we have a Schedule 1, and a Schedule 1 provides list of all such mines, and a Schedule 2 and 3 are subclasses of mines listed in a Schedule 1. So we will see what is that. A Schedule 2 mines are those whose production has already started then. Okay. By the time Supreme Court cancelled this order of 2014 by the UPA government, some coal mines already started that production. So Schedule 2 is having that list of mines which already started their production, and a Schedule 3 mines are the ones that had been earmarked for a specified end use. Okay, for a particular company, for a particular end use, those were specified, earmarked. So this company will be having the rights over that. So that list is present in a Schedule 3 of this Act, CMSP Act 2015. So what we are doing here, first of all, we are removing the restriction on end use of coal. And what does that mean? Now companies will be free to use the extracted mineral both for the captive use. Captive use means that suppose Tata is having a steel plant. So they have been allocated a particular coal mine for their steel plant, and now Tata is using that coal only for that particular steel plant. So that is called captive use of coal mine. Okay, for example, power, steel, cement. Steel I already told you in example. Okay, now Tata proposes that the mine they had got, or the coal mine they had got, that is producing some surplus coal. So now they want to sell it to other companies in commercial sale, in open market. So both of these things are allowed. Previously only captive mining or captive use was allowed, but now we are removing the restriction and allowing the companies to create more ease of doing business, and also it will give power to other companies also which are not having their own captive mine. So commercial sale is also now allowed by this amendment. The second very important criteria in this amendment is that talks about eligibility for auction of coal and lignite blocks. See, lignite is also a type of coal only. Now can you tell me in the comment section in which portion of India you will mainly find the lignite blocks? For a clue, it's in South India. Second thing, can you also tell me where is the anthracite mines or anthracite coal is, where can you find in India the anthracite coal? Only one location, and it is in very much north in India. So this bill clarifies that previously companies needed to have an experience in coal mining already. Only then they could apply for participation in auction of coal and lignite blocks. Now this, for ease of doing business, government is removing this criteria and saying that any company without any prior coal mining experience can participate in auction of coal and lignite blocks also. Also, competitive bidding. There will be competitive bidding. The Supreme Court has said, and government has also said, that auctions should be always allotted by competitive bidding, not on first come first serve basis. That was done by UPA government. That is why it was cancelled, right? There was some corruption. So there we should always follow competitive bidding. But when the government is involved, then the competitive bidding is not needed. See, a government company or its joint venture or government's own consumption, sale and other specified purpose, obviously government is not required to do competitive bidding, right? Government has the right, first right. Also in private sector also, suppose a company has been awarded a power project, and for that power project, we need coal mainly in India. Our power projects are mainly based on coal, you should know that. So a company, suppose, is awarded a power project, and that power project was awarded on the basis of competitive bidding. So for that, because already in the prior condition for the power project awarding, the company had gone for competitive bidding. So government says that those companies who were awarded power project on the basis of competitive bidding, now for their coal requirement, they do not need to go for the competitive bidding. They can come through other criteria, other ways also. So this is very important amendment. You should remember that. This will very clearly enforce ease of doing business. Second topic is done. Third, composite license for prospecting and mining. What is prospecting? Prospecting means assessment of the presence of coal or mines in a particular area, that whether below the surface of the soil there is coal or not, there is petroleum or not. That survey is known as prospecting. So now government is giving composite license. Prospecting also previously we needed a license, and for mining also we needed a license. So 2 licenses were required. So that was kind of license raj. So government says that no, now you will get a composite license. You can do the prospecting also, and suppose a coal mine is found there, coal is found there, then you can do the mining also. That is what it is said here. Currently separate licenses are provided for prospecting and mining of coal and lignite. So that is called prospecting license, and another one is called mining lease. Okay, mining lease. So for prospecting includes exploring, locating or finding mineral deposits. I already told you. Now bill adds a new type of license also called prospecting license cum mining lease. So in one license you will do the prospecting also, and you can do the mining also if you find the coal. This will be a composite license providing for both prospecting and mining activities. Very good step. Also there was another problem. There are types of reconnaissance permit. Reconnaissance is again the assessment only. See, reconnaissance means this term is used in army also. Reconnaissance means getting information from the other's territory, like in Pakistan what is happening. So we have intelligence sources and intelligence techniques, that is called reconnaissance. This reconnaissance is present in coal mining also. What is that? That means preliminary prospecting of a mineral through certain surveys, that how much mineral is present. For example, archaeological survey of India doing some assessment and reconnaissance in Uttar Pradesh, when there was a news that huge amount of coal has been found. So archaeological survey of India says that no, after reconnaissance we have found that there is no huge gold reserve. So this news was false. So reconnaissance means preliminary prospecting of a mineral through certain surveys. What was the problem? That this non-exclusive, okay, non-exclusive means not dedicated to only reconnaissance permit holders, were not allowed to get the other permits for exploration and mining and leasing. Okay, prospecting and mining lease were not provided to them. Okay, only exploration license was provided. That means reconnaissance permit was provided, but they were not allowed to go for prospecting and mining. Now this condition is removed. The bill provides that holders of such permit, non-exclusive reconnaissance permit, now they can apply for prospecting mining lease, or mining lease you can say. This will apply to certain licenses as prescribed in the bill. It is already written that which licenses will be allowed, because there are only few non-exclusive reconnaissance permits, so their list is already mentioned in the bill. Let's dig deep into the act more. Next thing is relocation after termination of the allocation. Suppose coal mine was given to me, okay, the license was given to me. Somehow I give up, or the government takes it off from me. For example, I'm doing some pollution, or I'm not following the rules. So there will be termination of license, termination of allocation. So that terminated license or terminated allocation, terminated lease can be reallocated to some other company or some other person. Such mines may be relocated through auction or allotment, as whatever the government determines. It's up to the government whether they want to redo the auction or they want to simply do the allotment to some company. Central government for that purpose will appoint a designated custodian. Custodian means caretaker, which will manage these mines until they are reallocated to some other person or company. Also, next topic is prior approval of the central government is not required in granting of reconnaissance permit. You heard about the reconnaissance permit. For that, prior approval from the government is not required. Prospective license or mining lease in respect of the minerals in certain cases. For some minerals, government's prior approval for reconnaissance or permit prospecting or mining is not required. So we should know that what are those minerals that government's approval is not required. An allocation order has been issued by the central government. In the previous section I told you for reallocation, central government may determine the ways for this. So suppose a government has already done an allocation by an order. For that, license will be not required. And also a notification of reservation of area has been issued by the central government or a state government. So a state government or central government can reserve an area, that this area will be given to this person or to the government only. So for that, license will be not required. So one step will be reduced. So that brings ease of doing business. Also, advance action for auction. State governments have been allowed for taking an advance action for auction of the mining lease before the expiry of the lease period. So suppose my lease period is for 99 years. So in advance period only, on the 50th anniversary of my lease only, government can do some advance action and government can determine who will be getting the lease, who will be getting the license when my 99 years expires, right? So that delay doesn't happen and the license or allocation goes to some other person very quickly. Transfer of statutory clearances to new bidders. The various approvals, license and clearances given to the previous lessee will be simply extended or transferred to the successful bidder for a period of 2 years. Simply transferred, okay, so that the excavation can happen without any interruption. Now let us talk about categories of minerals, very important for your prelims. Categories of minerals: major minerals, and second is minor minerals. What are major minerals? Major minerals are minerals like agate, asbestos, barytes, bauxite, cadmium, calcium, china clay, calcite, china clay, coal, copper, lead, manganese, mica, and these things, etc., as specified in second schedule. I already told you about the second schedule appended in this MMDR Act 1957. So these minerals you can see here. You can pause the video and you can see the list. These minerals in 1957 MMDR, that is Mines and Minerals Development Regulation Act 1957, are classified as major minerals. So what are minor minerals? Minor minerals are building stone, gravel, ordinary clay. So the products used in cement industry, right? Ordinary clay, sand also, ordinary sand, okay? Ordinary sand near the rivers which is being excavated, that is minor mineral. And UPSC asked some question about minor mineral, I think. And any other mineral which the central government may by notification in official gazette declare that this mineral will be from now a minor mineral. So government can do by official gazette declaration also. So we are talking about prelims, but still we should know some benefits of this amendment. First of all, this broadens the level playing field, right? Broadens the level playing field. because any company which is a novice, not having many mining experience, that company can also participate in this auction. So level playing field. Decrease in coal imports, because production will increase, so coal import will decrease. Efficient process of allocation, you see there was no intervention period, advanced action was also allowed, so these things will bring efficient process of allocation. Also we have this license come mining lease prospecting license come mining lease, so we will have efficient process of allocation for both coal and lignite, so this will streamline the process only for allocation. Third, removal of superfluous approvals. So many approvals were needed for the central government also, so that is not needed now. A smoother transition between one allocation and reallocation, a smoother transmission. And also we are transferring the statutory right also for 2 years, so that will also bring the period between one allocation and another allocation, it will reduce it. Attracting investment, if you have such good business environment and climate, the companies from outside and inside of the India will also be doing investment in coal and lignite blocks, and that will overall promote ease of doing business in mining sector. But there are some issues only. So some people say that when you are allowing these novice companies without any experience, so that will lead to dilution of eligibility criteria, because mining sector is highly specialized sector. So maybe the new companies will do a lot of pollution, they will not follow the standard operating procedure. Natural resources can be misused also, because with the removal of the end use restriction, you are removing the end use restriction, right? Because you are allowed to sell, apart from captive mining, one company is allowed to sell its coal in open area, open market also. So, and also we are allowing 100% FDI in this mining sector, so this can result in misuse by foreign players. You're very naturally vulnerable, your areas can be excavated, can be degraded, forest can be degraded, so natural resources can be misused, could be detrimental for environment. The same thing, polluters pay principle is also missing, that polluters pay principle is missing. Future of Coal India Limited is in doubt. This government company Coal India Limited, now how much coal they will be getting, how much captive mining they will be doing, this is very much in doubt, and it's already facing exchequer problem, and Coal India Limited actually is in deep crisis. So some people are saying that government's own company Coal India Limited is being sidelined and privatization is happening. Now let us start with our next topic, electronics manufacturing. Why electronic manufacturing is in news? Because Union Cabinet recently approved a financial assistance scheme, and that scheme is version 2 of electronics manufacturing clusters scheme. So we will come to know, don't worry, we will come to know about electronics manufacturing clusters scheme, but just know that electronics manufacturing clusters scheme is for enabling electronics manufacturing indigenously in India, providing them some financial assistance by the union government. Now this version 1 was highly successful, very good, so we are coming with a modification of it, and now we are calling it modified electronics manufacturing clusters scheme, EMC 2.0 scheme. So what we are trying to do now, obviously we will be enabling electronic manufacturing clusters in India, and we will be helping them. So we will develop world-class infrastructure and also common facilities and amenities through electronics manufacturing clusters, because these are clusters, right? So many production hubs will be situated side by side, so we will have common facilities and amenities for electronics manufacturing in electronic manufacturing clusters scheme 2.0. So let's first of all learn about EMC 1.0. What is the background? Ministry, this scheme will be coming from Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, right? So can you tell me in the comment section how many departments and which departments are present in Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology? That will be kind of revision for India Yearbook. This scheme was first of all notified in 2012 by the MeitY Ministry, and that was Electronics Manufacturing Clusters scheme in October 2012. Objective the same one, creation of world-class infrastructure for attracting investment. If you have the infrastructure, you will attract investment. In one sector you should know, ESDM sector, Electronic Systems and Design Manufacturing sector. This is a technical term, and you have to use this in, if you are writing a mains answer, use ESDM sector, full form Electronic Systems and Design Manufacturing sector. There we want the investment, that is why we came with EMC scheme. The scheme provides assistance for setting up both greenfield and brownfield EMCs across the country. What is greenfield and brownfield? Greenfield means there was no industry in a particular location, okay? A fresh industry, a fresh cluster is coming up, that is called greenfield. Suppose a forest was situated there, so you will remember that greenfield. And what is brownfield? Already there were some hubs, already there was some industry, already there was some company. So over that we are developing a new infrastructure, that is called brownfield. So there are airports also, greenfield and brownfield. Already an airport was present, and suppose tomorrow I buy that airport area and develop a new airport, that will be brownfield. And suppose I cut a jungle and create a new airport, that will be greenfield. So this assistance was for both greenfield and brownfield EMCs across the country for setting up of them. For projects in greenfield electronics manufacturing clusters, assistance was provided. 50% of the project cost can be provided here. The ceiling was there, upper ceiling was rupees 50 crore for every 100 acres of land. For brownfield EMCs, 75% of the cost of infrastructure was provided, and ceiling was 50 crore again. Remember that? Under the scheme, 20 greenfield EMCs and 3 common facility centers have been approved in 15 states already across the country. So there was a need for EMC 2.0, and we came up with this further strengthening of infrastructure base and electronic industry in the country and deepening the electronic value chain. Thus EMC 2.0 was approved, and this will lead to Make in India, which is very much in hibernation. So what are the key features of EMC 2.0? You see, the modified electronics manufacturing cluster EMC 2.0 scheme, this is in line with our national policy for electronics. In our national policy for electronics, we are trying to create so many hubs for electronics ESDM manufacturing, right? So for enforcing that, we are coming with modified electronics manufacturing clusters, so that India can become a global hub for mobile and component manufacturing. This is all related to electronics. So now if we want to reduce our import from China, because China is having almost 70 to 75% market in mobile in India. So we first need to go for national policy for electronics. For encouraging national policy for electronics, we need EMC 2.0, EMC 1.0, and by that we will be bringing investment, and we will be becoming a global hub for mobile manufacturing and mobile component manufacturing also. Can you tell me, in mobile manufacturing, we need rare earth metals, rare earth minerals or metals. So which country is exporting us maximum amount of rare earth minerals or metals? And also tell me in the comment, if you know a lot, that which states of India and which locations of India have been producing rare earth indigenously for us in a small amount only, but where can you find the rare earth metals in India naturally extracted? The scheme would support setting up of electronics manufacturing clusters. Okay, financial assistance 75% and 50%, you remember. For brownfield 75%, for greenfield 50%, upper limit 50 crore for 100 acres. Focus is on developing infrastructure, amenities and other common facilities for ESDM sector. I already told you. The scheme would also support, we are talking about the EMC. What about common facility center? Common facility center will be set up in an area where a significant number of existing manufacturing units are already located, and focus will be on upgradation of common technical infrastructure, and there we will have industrial parks, industrial corridors, okay, and units of EMCs. So just listen to some benefits. This will provide a robust infrastructure base for electronic industry, mobile manufacturing in India. The new investment will be attracted because you have good ESDM sector, so investment will be attracted. Employment opportunities for manufacturing units, we will encourage a manufacture in India, make in India. And also, if the companies are growing up, manufacturing units are growing up, they will pay some taxes to the government. So revenue in the form of taxes. Help development of entrepreneurial ecosystem. A startup ecosystem will be encouraged, and because this is a very highly technical area, so innovation, IP and all, and economic growth of the country will be promoted by this scheme. So right now, what is the electronics production condition in India? India's electronic production has increased. If we compare 2014-15, our electronic production was rupees 19 lakh, okay, sorry, 1,90,000 crore, or in US dollar billion, you can say 29 US dollar billion. And now in 2018-19, how much we have? We have 4,58,000 crore in electronics production. That is $70 US billion. IIT compounded, if you measure the growth rate, so compound annual growth rate of electronics manufacturing production in India is about 25%, almost quarter. So that is very good growth. India's share in global electronics manufacturing is still very low, and that was previously in 2012 it was 1.3%. Now we have increased in 2018 to 3.0% or 3%. Okay. And in our GDP, how much share is of electronics production? 2.3%. Not very bad, not very good. We are growing up, that's a good thing. Our next topic is very popular topic, consolidation of public sector banks. Union cabinet, again Union cabinet chaired by Prime Minister, you should know that. Can you tell me in the comment section which cabinet committees are chaired by the Prime Minister of India, and how many cabinet committees are currently functioning, and who is heading the, particularly tell me who is heading the appointments committee. So Union cabinet is always chaired by Prime Minister of India, and that has approved the mega consolidation of 10 public sector banks into 4. So you should always remember which 10 public sector banks will be created in which one. So in 2017 we had 27 banks. Now we will have only 12 banks in public sector. So you can pause the slide, I can see, and you can see which banks will be merged to which one. And you don't need to know the second largest, PSB and all. Obviously SBI is the first one, so we have second largest here, Punjab National Bank, Oriental Bank of Commerce and United Bank, and their total business is 18 lakh crore. You should not remember that, okay? You should only know that the largest public sector bank in India is SBI. The second one, which will become second largest, is PNB, Oriental Bank of Commerce and United Bank. Together these 3 banks will become the second largest public sector bank of India, and the other 4 banks you can see after merger, other 3 banks, so 3 plus 1, total 4 banks will be created by the merger of how many banks? 10 banks. 3 here, 2 here, and then again 3 here and 2 here. So that is how 5 plus 5, total 10 banks coming into together 4 banks. Now this is a very much conceptual topic. What is the benefit of bank consolidation? But UPSC prelims is a knowledge test also and concept test also. So they can ask you what are the probable benefits of bank consolidation, and they will give you some confusing statements. First of all, cost benefit. Large bank offers economies of scale. Suppose economies of scale is what? Suppose I am producing 1 kg of rice in my farmland, and tomorrow I produce 10 kg of rice. So while I produce 1 kg of rice, the production cost will be more according to the proportion only. For 1 kg of rice, suppose I have 5 rupees of expenditure, right? And maybe for 10 kg of rice, if you calculate technically, for 1 kg of rice, the cost suppose I am giving is 5 rupees. For 10 kg it should be 50 rupees. But economies of scale says that when I was producing 1 kg rice and cost was 5 rupees, and when I am producing 10 kg of rice, the cost will not be 50 rupees, cost may be 30 rupees, 40 rupees, but it will reduce. So that is what better economies of scale. When your production size increases, average cost on the production decreases. So again, in the banking sector also, this is the cost benefit. When you are merging and making a large bank, so your economies of scale will improve, efficiency will improve, cost of funding will also get better, and risk diversification, because there are so many banks merging together, so you are not having all eggs in the same basket. So that is why risk diversification will happen, and your risk will average out, risk will reduce. Revenue benefits also. The bigger banks, economies and scope for large deals, because all the banks are coming with their capital, so maybe they will be able to fund someone who has a large need, a big need. So that is economies and scope for large deals. गरीब भी कितना करेगा, है ना? पुअर बैंक कितना करेगा? इतने बैंक मिलके गए, बड़ी फंडिंग कर सकते हैं, किसी को बड़ा इन्वेस्टमेंट करवा सकते हैं. And also banks prudential norms limit the size of lending by banks. You know the RBI's prudential norms that you have to secure this much money, you have to keep reserve this much money, only then you can provide the loan. But if you have big banks, you will have more capital, and you will have more capital for providing loan or lending. Then bank can take risk also, because the size is big. So that will lead to investment in large projects. Large banks with huge lending capacity are needed to meet India's infrastructure sector, particularly because we have a 5 trillion goal for GDP, and for that we need big investment. Also the adoption of technology. When amalgamation is happening, one bank is having one technology, another bank is having another technology, And then we will have a wider talent pool coming from different banks, a large database also, that will lead to PSBs to be in a position to gain competitive advantage by leveraging analytics of different banks which are merging together in a rapidly digitalizing banking landscape today we have. Also, consolidation will help create banks which scale comparable to global banks, because the global banks are very big, the US bank are very big, our banks are smaller compared to them. Now we can compete with them, so it will lead to our global competitiveness. Customer service will also improve because the larger banks will have more staff, है ना? So and the banks can offer different kinds of diversified products. So these services will help in integrating growth of the banking sector. Human resource also, there are wide disparities between the staff of various banks in their service condition, and monetary benefits will narrow down now. Improve regulation also, because a few banks, so regulation and monitoring will be easy for the RBI. So, but are not there any concern? Yes, there are concern, because the top leadership has a problem adjusting in new institution, new unions. Okay, there are some unions also, and the top leadership says that how can we adjust with the new bank, new staff and all. There may be some pink slips also. There may be some cost cutting, and maybe some people will lose their job. Okay. Also, suppose tomorrow we have Bank of Baroda nearby. Suppose in front of my door we have Bank of Baroda ATM. Also have SBI ATM. But when the merger is happening, suppose a merger happens between Bank of Baroda and SBI. So one of the ATMs will be closed, because this is only one bank. So merger will result in shifting or closure of many ATMs. So ease of access to banking may reduce. Branches and controlling offices might reduce, as it is not prudent and it is not advisable that for merge after the merger also you keep the duplications and you keep so many outlets of banks and ATMs nearby only. So that can lead to concentration of bank in several pockets. They might not go in rural areas, and they just can adjust themselves into urban areas only, metropolitan centers only. So this will lead to reduction in inclusive development. Financial inclusion will reduce. Also, merger will result in immediate job losses. That is very much possible, because so many staffs will not be needed, and so they might be provided VRS, voluntary retirement scheme, and that will slow down or stop the further recruitment also. So you can see the bank PO recruitments have already decreased in number of vacancies. This will worsen the unemployment situation. Already we have in India very bad unemployment situation, that might worsen with this step. That may create law and order problem also, because many youth will be unemployed. Merger will also result in clash of different organizational culture. Bank of Baroda has a different organizational culture, different way of behaving, and SBI might have different. So there may be some conflict also, conflict between the staff also, conflict between the management also, and the conflict in the process also. That can lead to pressure on whole system. Might be some processes will be slowed down in the conflict. Also, what is the problem? Suppose tomorrow we have only 4 banks, and suppose those 4 banks crumble, okay, fall down. We had 10 banks, 12 banks, 27 banks. One of them crumbles down or falls down, we will not have a big problem. But if the big bank, too big to fail, there is one technical term also, too big to fail. For example, SBI, ICICI, these banks are considered too big to fail. And if they are failing, it is supposed that Indian government will provide them assistance and they do not fall, because if they fall, whole country's investment scenario will change and it will lead to economic fallout, a very strong in impact. So that can lead to big jolt in entire banking industry, and repercussion will be felt even globally, not even only indigenously India. Globally, this will lead to repercussion. That is a very big risk. Now, very important topic. What are the committees which were created in past regarding bank merger? See, first of all came Narasimhan Committee. It came twice, 1991, and second Narasimhan Committee came in 1998. They suggested that a strong bank should be merged in both in public sector and even with the development of financial institution and NBFCs. So he suggested that, Narasimhan suggested in 1991 and 1998, and in fact Narasimhan's suggestion was taken and many banks were merged. So Narasimhan suggested that the strong banks both in public sector and even in the development financial institutions and non-banking financial companies, wherever present, they should be merged. Khan Committee came in 1997, and they stressed that there is need for harmonization of role of commercial banks and financial institution, not directly merging, but they said that there should be harmony in commercial banks and financial institution. That is also a kind of merger suggestion only. Verma committee, then came Verma committee. Can you tell me in the comment section when did this Verma committee related to banking merger come? Verma committee pointed one thing, that consolidation will lead to pooling of a strength and lead to overall reduction in cost of operation, that is economies of scale. So that was indirect suggestion for the merger only. So Verma committee, Narasimhan committee and Khan committee are related to bank merger. Narasimhan committee came twice, 1991 and 1998. So way ahead is that merger is a good idea, but we should take care and right reasons should be produced. Merger is very tricky and some challenges banks can face. For example, bad loan problem. A bank having very bad loan goes to another bank for a merger, and the new merged bank will have the bad loan problem. So the whole financial system should not plunge. Okay, that we have to look out for some unprecedented crisis expectation also. In this lecture only this much. Taxing global technology companies we will see in the next lecture, because I think a few topics from March are already remaining, 2 or 3 topics. So next lecture will be small and short, and we will have their taxing global technology company and a few other topics also. That is all for today. Take care. Good night. Study well.